A person who intentionally hurts you does not always scream when they do it. Sometimes the damage comes in silence, in absence, in carefully chosen moments of neglect, and that is how you know it was never an accident. Take a breath here and feel what that truth does in your body. Because when pain is subtle, when betrayal is precise, when your spirit feels the sting but your mind keeps making excuses, that is where inner suffering begins. We often think hate must look like rage, like yelling, like violence. But no, the most dangerous hatred is quiet. It calculates. It chooses the exact words that will break your self-esteem. It waits until you're vulnerable to withdraw affection. It pretends not to notice your pain. And the worst part, it does not flinch when it sees you suffer. When someone harms you with intention, it is not merely an action. It is an expression of their inner landscape. Their choice to damage rather than dialogue, to destroy rather than understand, to act with precise cruelty rather than chaotic confusion. These are not just signs of emotional immaturity, but of spiritual misalignment. And yet, when it happens to us, we rarely recognize it immediately. We try to rationalize. We search for what we did wrong. We blame ourselves. We wonder if we misunderstood. But wisdom begins where denial ends. There is a story from the Shaolin tradition. A student once asked the master, "How do I know if a tiger means to kill me or if it is just playing?" The master replied, "A tiger that plays will never draw blood. If you are bleeding, stop pretending it was a game." This teaching holds great relevance in human relationships. Sometimes we excuse damage as a misunderstanding. We believe the person was having a bad day, that they didn't mean it. But over time, patterns reveal intention. A one-time hurt may be an accident, but repeated emotional cuts, delivered with awareness of your sensitivities, are not mistakes. They are messages. And here is what most people fail to understand. Intentional damage does not always scream. It whispers. It manipulates. It waits for your vulnerability and chooses that precise moment to strike. It may come through sarcasm, passive-aggressive remarks, deliberate silence, or sudden emotional withdrawal, right when you needed support the most. The pain it causes is not chaotic, it's calculated. And therein lies its true cruelty. When someone hits you once in anger, you feel the sting. But when someone undermines your worth slowly, persistently, with careful words and subtle acts, it begins to erode your sense of self. Not all weapons are loud. Some are psychological. And when those weapons are wielded with knowledge of your heart, it's not just unkind, it is intentional destruction. Why does a person who hates you often avoid direct confrontation? Because confrontation requires honesty. It reveals, and to harm with impunity, one must conceal their motive. A person who damages you intentionally does not want you to fight back. They want you confused, unsure, hoping, waiting. They want you dependent on their approval, all while pulling the rug from under your feet. This is where awareness must begin, not in the mind, but in the body. Because long before you realize someone is hurting you intentionally, your body already knows. Your breath shortens around them. Your chest tightens. Your sleep becomes restless. Your joy becomes cautious. The body has no need to rationalize. It only reacts to energy. When someone's presence brings a persistent tension, your nervous system is speaking. Listen, modern neuroscience confirms this truth. The human nervous system is built to attune, especially in close relationships. When someone we trust acts in a way that contradicts their words, our nervous system goes into dissonance. This is known as limbic confusion. It is the reason why someone can smile at you, speak calmly, even hold your hand, and yet your stomach feels uneasy, your muscles remain tight, your intuition rings like an alarm. It is not your mind being paranoid. It is your limbic system detecting a mismatch, a violation between what is shown and what is felt. Intentional harm is rarely about volume. It is about precision. And that is what makes it dangerous, because it penetrates deep without leaving visible scars. It breaks down your inner knowing. It causes you to question your perceptions. And the more you question yourself, the more power the other person gains. There is a saying in the Taoist teachings, "He who distorts your mirror controls your reflection." If someone can cause you to question your reality, they can shape your identity. And this, for many who hate in silence, is the goal. Not just to hurt you, but to remake you in a weaker image. It often begins subtly. A partner who consistently jokes about your dreams, calling them silly or unpractical. A friend who only compliments you when you're down but grows silent when you succeed. A family member who remembers every mistake but never your efforts. These are not random lapses. Over time, they condition you to associate connection with self-betrayal. And that is how you begin to shrink yourself to maintain peace. But peace built on self-erasure is not peace, it is captivity. To heal from this, one must first acknowledge the truth. Not everyone who hurts you does so accidentally. Some do it because they feel powerless within. And instead of facing their inner suffering, they project it onto others, especially those who carry light, warmth, or sensitivity. If you shine too brightly, if you love too freely, if you dream too wildly, you become a mirror that reflects their own limitations. And in their hatred, they attempt to break the mirror rather than change themselves. Understanding this brings clarity, not blame. It is not your responsibility to fix someone who chooses to harm. It is your responsibility to recognize when harm is deliberate and to withdraw your energy from it. That is the first act of self-respect. But many struggle with this, because those who damage you intentionally often pretend to care. They offer just enough warmth to keep you hoping. They may apologize, briefly, only to repeat the same wound again. This creates an addictive loop in your brain. Intermittent reinforcement, psychologists call it. Your mind begins to chase validation from the very source of pain, hoping that one day they'll see your worth. But let us be clear, seeking love from a person who hates you is like begging for water from a poisoned well. What you drink may feel quenching, but it is laced with sickness. And the longer you drink, the more confused your soul becomes. So how do we free ourselves? The first step is awareness, not just mental awareness, but physical presence. Come back into your body. Sit in silence. Place your hand on your heart and ask, do I feel safe with this person or only attached? There is a difference. Attachment is fear-based. It clings, it doubts, it obsesses. Safety, on the other hand, is grounded. It allows you to breathe fully, to speak freely, to relax into your being. If someone's presence causes your body to contract again and again, listen to that. You do not need a justification. You do not need permission. You need alignment. This brings us to the physiological damage that occurs when we remain in the orbit of those who hurt us deliberately. Chronic exposure to emotional cruelty activates the body's stress response. Cortisol levels rise. Heart rate variability decreases. Your breathing becomes shallow. Digestion slows. The immune system weakens. Over time, this leads to fatigue, brain fog, emotional numbing, and physical illness. The body begins to collapse under the weight of constant self-protection. In relationships where harm is intentional, the nervous system becomes hypervigilant. You're always anticipating the next blow. And even when it doesn't come, the anticipation alone drains your energy. You are not living, you are surviving. But the body, just like the spirit, can recover. Begin with the breath, deep, slow inhalations through the nose, and even slower exhalations through the mouth. This simple act signals the parasympathetic nervous system to activate, calming the fight or flight response. With practice, breath becomes the bridge between chaos and clarity. Practice grounding. Stand barefoot on the earth. Feel the weight of your body supported. Stretch slowly. Move with intention. Let the body remember what safety feels like, because when you return to your body, you return to your power. And understand this, reclaiming your nervous system is not just a physical act. It is a spiritual rebellion. You are saying, I will no longer let your hatred live in my body. I will no longer carry your damage as my burden. When we begin to live from this space of awareness, our relationships shift. We stop explaining ourselves to those who are committed to misunderstanding us. We stop justifying our needs to those who weaponize them. And we stop believing that someone who chooses to harm us will one day decide to heal us. Do not let their silence become your shame. Do not let their control become your identity. Your soul is not a battlefield. It is a garden. But a garden must be protected. Not everything is allowed to enter. Not everyone deserves to walk among your flowers. It is not hatred to protect yourself from those who damage you intentionally. It is love. Love for yourself. Love for your future. Love for the version of you that has waited years to feel free. And the moment you choose this love, the moment you choose to believe your body, your breath, in your knowing, you begin to heal. Not because the damage didn't happen, but because it no longer defines you. From this place, we move forward. Not in fear, not in anger, but in wisdom. And this wisdom, once awakened, changes everything. In moments of deep emotional pain, when the words of others slice through our sense of peace, the natural reaction is to strike back. To defend, to explain, to shout our innocence into the silence. But this response, while human, is not always wise. The body, stirred by pain, surges with energy. The heart beats faster, the breath quickens, the fists may clench. Yet in this very moment of heat, the ancient teachings remind us stillness is the greatest form of strength. From the Shaolin perspective, the one who reacts is always at a disadvantage, because reaction is not choice, it is habit. And habitual reaction, especially in relationships where harm is deliberate, only feeds the cycle of suffering. The person who seeks to damage you wants your reaction. They want your fire. They want you off center. When you respond in anger or desperation, they feel power. But when you remain still, calm, grounded, rooted like a mountain, they are disarmed. Because stillness cannot be manipulated. It is a language the unconscious does not understand. There is a teaching in Eastern philosophy. To observe without becoming is to master the moment. In the heat of emotional confrontation, to observe what is arising in your body without becoming that emotion is the foundation of inner freedom. This does not mean suppression. It means awareness. It means choosing not to be possessed by anger, sadness, or fear, but instead to witness it like a passing cloud, knowing that it is not who you are. Let us take an example. Imagine a partner who knows your wounds well. They know your childhood pain. They know the words that haunt you. And in a moment of conflict, rather than discuss with care, they weaponize your past. They throw it at you like stones. The temptation is strong to scream, to cry, to retreat or retaliate. But in that moment, the one who can pause, just for a breath, creates space. And in that space, clarity is born. Breath is the key. A deep inhale, held gently, then released slowly. This simple act interrupts the automatic cycle of reaction. Neuroscience tells us that when we take control of our breath, we engage the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher reasoning and choice. We step out of the survival brain and into the conscious self. This is not philosophy, it is biology. Over time, the practice of stillness becomes a shield, not a wall that isolates, but a boundary that protects. You no longer respond to every provocation. You no longer explain yourself to those who don't seek understanding. You do not lower your frequency to match the aggression of another. Instead, you remain rooted in your breath, in your truth, in your knowing. This is not weakness. It is the deepest form of power. Stillness is not the absence of emotion. It is the disciplined container of emotion. You feel the fire rise, but you do not let it consume the house. You allow the storm to pass, but you do not drown in the rain. This practice, though difficult, transforms not only your relationships, but your entire way of living. You begin to see clearly who is aligned with your peace and who only thrives in your chaos. It is said in martial arts that the most dangerous fighter is the one who does not flinch, who does not speak, who does not react to provocation. Why? Because that fighter is centered. And when centered, nothing external can dictate internal movement. The same principle applies in emotional conflict. The one who remains centered holds the true power. But it takes training. Like the monk who sits beneath the waterfall, unmoved by the force of the current, you must return again and again to the posture of presence. When the world screams, you listen to your breath. When accusations fly, you anchor into your body. When someone tries to define you by your worst moment, you remember that you are not what you feel. You are what you do with what you feel. There is a story of a woman whose partner often belittled her in public. Subtle jabs disguised as jokes. Each time, she laughed it off, told herself it wasn't serious. But over time, she began to notice her heart shrinking. She stopped speaking up. She stopped shining. One day, she sat in silence after yet another joke that cut deep. But instead of reacting, she simply observed her breath. She placed her hand on her chest and whispered, "This is not who I am, and I will not make a home in someone's shadow." From that day forward, she changed, not with revenge, not with confrontation, but with calm, deliberate distance. She withdrew not in anger, but in alignment, and her stillness spoke louder than any argument ever could. This is the essence of emotional non-reactivity, not passivity, but purposeful stillness. It is the refusal to let someone else's storm become your climate. And from this place of clarity, something else begins to reveal itself, an even deeper truth. The people who seek to damage you with intention are often at war with themselves. Their hatred is not born from your flaws. It is a projection of their own fragmentation. You become the screen onto which they project their unresolved pain. And if you're not aware, you may begin to internalize their shadows as your identity. This is where the mirror becomes important. Everyone we meet is a mirror. Some reflect our light, some reflect our wounds, and others reflect the parts of themselves they cannot face. When someone projects their pain onto you, they are not seeing you. They are seeing a version of themselves they refuse to heal. It is easier to attack what we do not understand than to confront what we fear within. In psychology, this is known as projection, a defense mechanism where an individual denies their own attributes and ascribes them to someone else. A person who feels inadequate may call you arrogant. A person who feels abandoned may accuse you of being distant. A person who cannot forgive themselves may shame you endlessly for your imperfections. And if you absorb these projections, you begin to carry their pain as if it were your own. But there is another way. When you recognize projection for what it is, you step out of the role they've cast you in. You say, "This is not my reflection." And just like that, you stop playing the role in their unconscious play. There is a powerful line from the Buddhist teachings. The arrow that hits you is not the one they shoot, it is the one you do not remove. When someone projects their pain onto you, it may pierce. But whether you let it remain in your soul, that is your choice. Removing the arrow is not easy. It requires silence. It requires clarity. It requires the courage to see that their hatred was never truly about you. This does not mean we excuse the behavior. It means we no longer take it personally. We return their projections to the source, not in anger, but in understanding. Because understanding is what frees us. Not for their sake, but for our own. Think of the child who lashes out at a parent. The child is not evil. They are overwhelmed. The parent, grounded in love, does not react with equal fury. They breathe. They create space. They see beyond the behavior to the unmet need. Now apply this same lens to the adult who wounds with words, who cuts with silence, who manipulates with subtlety. Inside them is often a wounded child, unseen, unheard, unhealed. Their behavior is not justified, but it is understood. And from that understanding, you are freed from needing to change them. Because you finally see, it was never about you. The moment you internalize this truth, your relationships change. You no longer accept blame for emotions that are not yours. You stop dancing to the rhythm of someone else's chaos. You stop proving your worth to those who refuse to see it. You simply return to presence. And from that presence, you choose wisely. Who deserves your energy? Who earns your trust? Who belongs in the sacred circle of your heart? This is not arrogance. It is self-honoring. You are not a sponge for others' pain. You are a vessel of light. And not every light belongs in every room. As this understanding deepens, your body begins to shift. The nervous system relaxes. The breath deepens. The muscles release because the need to perform, to explain, to defend disappears. You are no longer living in someone else's projection. You are living in your truth. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, ask yourself, is this mine to carry? Or am I simply standing in front of a mirror that reflects their wall? And if the answer is the latter, step back. Return to your breath. Observe. Do not become. Because when you see clearly, you no longer play roles that diminish your spirit. You stand still. You stay present. You protect your peace not by building walls, but by honoring your space. Not by closing your heart, but by opening your eyes. And in this still, unshakable presence, something beautiful begins to happen. You remember who you are, and no one, not even those who seek to harm, can take that from you. When someone crosses a boundary you've clearly set, and they do so not out of ignorance, but with awareness and repetition, this is not a misunderstanding. It is an intention. And when this pattern emerges in a relationship, it reveals not a flaw in your communication, but a fracture in their respect. It is a signal, not from them, but from life itself, asking you to turn inward and ask, why do I allow myself to be near someone who thrives on diminishing my limits? In Eastern wisdom, boundaries are not walls, they are contours of self-respect. They are the visible edge of the invisible inner world. Without them, your energy leaks. Your joy becomes diluted. Your spirit, though powerful, begins to wither under the pressure of constantly accommodating someone else's chaos. There is a silence that speaks volumes, especially when your boundary is met not with consideration, but with retaliation. Think of the friend who mocks your values when you begin to grow. The partner who becomes distant the moment you claim space to rest or reflect. The colleague who interprets your silence as weakness and exploits it. In each of these cases, your boundary has touched a part of them they refuse to face. And rather than meet you with maturity, they react with control. In such dynamics, people are not rejecting your limit. They are rejecting your freedom, because your freedom exposes their insecurity. Your clarity threatens their manipulation. Your growth unsettles the scaffolding they have built around your dependence. So instead of celebrating your evolution, they push back, they test, they provoke, they ignore what you've stated plainly, hoping you will cave into your old patterns. This is not love. This is control disguised as connection. And the greatest danger is that we confuse persistence with care. They must love me, we say, because they're still here. But sometimes the one who stays is not the one who supports. You must understand this. Sometimes the one who stays is simply the one who knows how to keep you doubting yourself. And so the cycle repeats: boundary, backlash, apology, re-engagement, until you begin to feel like the very act of protecting your peace is a betrayal to them. But it is not a betrayal to them. It is a betrayal to yourself when you surrender it. There's a story told in Zen tradition of a monk who lived at the edge of a river. A traveler once came to him in distress. "Every time I try to cross," the man said, "the current pulls me under. It's as if the water wants me to drown." The monk replied calmly, "The river is not against you. It simply does what rivers do. You must learn when to step in and when to step away." So it is with relationships. Not everyone who pulls you under is evil. Some are simply untrained, unconscious. But regardless of the reason, the result is the same. You suffer when you keep entering spaces that do not honor your soul. And wisdom is learning not to demonize the river, but to respect your own threshold. In trauma-informed psychology, this threshold is known as your window of tolerance. It's the zone in which your nervous system can function with stability. When someone consistently crosses your emotional limits through shouting, belittling, gaslighting, or emotional withdrawal, your body begins to live in either hyper, vigilance, or shutdown. You are no longer present. You are surviving, and no meaningful connection can flourish in this state. Setting boundaries, then, is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. When you state, "I cannot accept this tone," or "I need time to process before responding," or "I will not engage when I'm being manipulated," you are not being dramatic. You are regulating your body. You are choosing health over dysfunction. And though others may label this selfish, it is in fact the foundation of relational safety. But this safety does not arise from words alone. Anyone can speak a boundary. The test is whether you will act when that boundary is violated, because energy does not respond to intention. It responds to behavior. If someone continuously disrespects your space and you remain available, your energy teaches them that your words carry no consequence. And in a world ruled by patterns, people believe your actions more than your explanations. You must remember this every time you allow a boundary to be crossed without response. You teach them how to treat you. And if they hate you for asserting yourself, it is not because you did something wrong. It is because your boundary revealed something in them they refuse to face. It exposed their entitlement. It mirrored their lack of self-regulation. It disrupted the dynamic where you played small so they could feel large. In this way, boundaries are sacred, not because they protect you from others, but because they reveal the truth of others. And once that truth is seen, the burden of illusion lifts. You no longer wait for them to change. You no longer argue for your right to be respected. You simply acknowledge this person is not compatible with the love I am cultivating within. And that realization, while painful, is also freeing. There is an ancient Taoist phrase, soft is stronger than hard. Water conquers stone. Your boundary need not be aggressive to be powerful. It can be spoken with softness, with grace, but it must be consistent. Because when firmness is rooted in inner peace, it becomes immovable. You do not need to scream to be heard. You need only to be clear and to act accordingly. Clarity is not cruelty. It is kindness to your nervous system. It is the restoration of trust within your own being. And from this place of clarity, a new pattern emerges. One where your boundaries are not reactive, but responsive. Not walls of isolation, but invitations for mutual respect. And those who cannot meet you there, they naturally fall away. Not because you pushed them, but because you stopped collapsing your truth to accommodate their comfort. As you grow more attuned to this inner clarity, another realization dawns. Patterns of emotional damage are often recycled through silence. Not the silence of wisdom, but the silence of avoidance. And the only way to break this cycle is to become deeply conscious of the environments you expose your nervous system to. You cannot regulate your emotions in a space designed to destabilize you. Just as a plant cannot bloom in toxic soil, your spirit cannot flourish in a dynamic that thrives on your disempowerment. And this brings us to a subtle but profound shift in awareness. Emotional damage is not always about what someone does to you. Sometimes it is about what they continually withhold. They withhold affirmation, withhold transparency, withhold softness, withhold accountability. In doing so, they starve the relationship of the very nutrients that sustain connection. And over time, this absence becomes louder than any insult. It becomes the echo you carry into every room, wondering, am I asking for too much? You are not. But you must stop asking for it from those who use your longing as leverage. There is a wound so many carry the hope that if you just love them better, they will change. That if you shrink your needs, they will stop punishing your presence. That if you forgive enough, they will one day wake up and finally see your worth. But this hope, if left unexamined, becomes a prison. Because you begin to bend your truth in hopes of bending their behavior. And in that bending, you abandon yourself. This is not love. This is survival dressed in hope. True healing begins when you recognize that the energy you invest in trying to be understood by someone who benefits from misunderstanding you is energy better spent on understanding yourself. Self-understanding births self-honoring. And self-honoring leads to self-extraction from dynamics that distort your dignity. At this stage, some may say, but isn't this unforgiving? Isn't this selfish? No, it is sacred. It is the practice of loving yourself enough to stop auditioning for roles in someone else's unresolved drama. And in this space, forgiveness finds its true form, not as reconciliation, not as excusing harm, but as release. The release of the illusion that you can change someone who refuses to meet you in the mirror. The release of resentment, not for their sake, but for the peace of your own body. The release of the need to carry the weight of someone else's lack of growth. As you walk this path, your posture begins to shift, not just emotionally, but physically. Neuroscience and somatic therapy tell us that when we live in environments that lack safety, the body curls in, shoulders round, jaw tightens, breathing becomes shallow. The body speaks what the mouth cannot. But when you begin to reclaim your space, internally and relationally, the body unfolds, chest opens, breath deepens, spine lengthens. You no longer armor yourself against connection, because now you know how to choose connection that does not require self-erasure. This is the essence of nervous system sovereignty, to be able to enter a room, a conversation, a relationship, and remain in your body, to breathe fully, to speak truthfully, to move freely, to feel safe not because others behave, but because you know how to leave when they don't. It is a quiet kind of power, but it is unmistakable. You do not need to convince anyone. You do not need to debate your worth. You do not need to stay in proximity to those who continually ask you to prove the basic right to be treated well. You simply breathe, rise, and walk in peace. Because your peace is not something others can give. It is something you choose to protect. And in that choice, you teach others not just how to treat you, but how to treat themselves. You become a mirror not of their wound, but of their possibility. Not all will choose to see, but some will. And for those who do, your presence becomes a path, a quiet invitation to rise. When you step back and observe the full pattern, not just the actions of others, but your own responses, you come to a powerful truth. The people who intentionally damage you are not reflections of your worth, but mirrors of their own unresolved pain. And your willingness to remain in their cycle does not speak to your love. It reveals the depth of your disconnection from self. To see someone's hatred is not always about the words they speak. It is in the way they twist your silence. It is in how they weaponize your vulnerability. It is in how they exploit your compassion, your forgiveness, your hope. And when these signs are ignored, emotional harm does not just repeat, it deepens. But this realization is not meant to provoke resentment. It is meant to awaken clarity, because clarity is the birthplace of self-mastery. And when you choose to no longer participate in dynamics that require you to be smaller, quieter, more afraid, what you are truly doing is reclaiming your energy. You are stepping out of the prison of emotional negotiation and stepping into the temple of inner authority. Eastern philosophy teaches, where the mind goes, energy flows. So if your mind is constantly occupied with surviving someone else's disrespect, your energy will follow. But when your mind anchors itself in self-awareness and your body aligns with that truth through breath, posture, presence, then your energy becomes magnetic, focused, alive. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer plead. You walk away. You no longer doubt. You discern. And this is not harshness. It is harmony. To live with emotional discipline, to honor your nervous system, to choose people who nourish your growth and walk away from those who demand your decay. That is not isolation. That is liberation. So the next time someone damages you intentionally and hides behind apologies or excuses, ask yourself not just what they did, but what staying is costing you. Is it costing your peace, your health, your sleep, your ability to trust yourself, then it is too expensive. You owe no one your continued presence at the cost of inner freedom. And when you begin to understand this, not just in your mind, but in your cells, in your breath, in your choices, then even the most subtle act of self-respect becomes a revolution. The journey forward is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming clear. Not about being feared, but about being firm. Not about carrying pain, but about learning from it, transforming it into wisdom, into strength, into deeper compassion that no longer requires self-betrayal to be expressed. This is what it means to live with stillness in the heart and fire in the soul. To see clearly, to speak truthfully, to walk peacefully, and to love, not at the expense of your dignity, but as an expression of your highest alignment. This is self-mastery. This is your path. And now you know the way.